Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, today I've got another FAQ, and we get a lot of questions from people, and sometimes I like to put some of these questions in the form of a video, that I think will serve a large amount of people. This is a question that I get all the freaking time. I get it so often that I get tired of answering it over and over and over again, but I hope this video will point some of you in the right direction, and this will help some folks that are on their journey and answer this particular question. So the question I get is, how in the world do I pick out my first handgun? What do I choose? What do I look for? Look, when people are getting into firearms for the first time, usually most people opt for some type of a pistol because mainly they want to be able to carry on their person and protect themselves wherever they happen to be. I mean, that makes sense. You want a small concealable gun that, maybe you're not ready to let your family know you have it yet. Maybe you're not ready to, let your friends know you have it. Handguns are easier to hide in your house, keep them away from your kids. They're easier to lock up. You can have a smaller safe. There's a lot of reasons that a handgun is an attractive option for somebody wanting to get into firearms for the first time. Of course, the before mentioned, reasons. But, where do you start? What do you look at? There's all these questions that go through your head. Well, I'm going to try my best to answer those questions for you today, and hopefully you'll come away with a better understanding of some of the things you need to be thinking about when it comes to your first handgun purchase. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting our videos. If you're looking for a career in gunsmithing technology, you will not find a finer group of people. Wonderful instructors, awesome distance learning programs. You can learn about gunsmithing. You can learn how to fly drones even, which is cool. They got a great reloading program. I mean, anything at all that you want to know about firearms technology to get into a career in gunsmithing or to fly drones for a living, they are definitely your go-to group of people. Check them out, Sonoran Desert Institute, SDI, and tell them we sent you. And big fans of their work. Great people. So big thanks to them for supporting today's piece of content here. So let's get into this. Obviously there's going to be a lot of factors that you're going to need to kind of think about. And I'm going to start at the most crucial ones, and I'm going to try my best to not use a lot of weird terminology. I'm going to try to just break this down super simple, right? At the end of the day, you want a gun, you've seen crap that's going on TV. You're worried, you're scared. You don't know if the police are going to be able to protect you. You want to have the means to protect yourself. The world's a crazy place, and you've chosen to arm yourself. Well, that's a great idea. You should certainly do that. It's a good idea. So, you want a handgun. So handguns can come in a heck of a lot of different shapes and sizes. I mean, just representative examples that I've got here on the table in front of me. We're not going to get super crazy, but all right, this is a FNX Tactical 45 ACP pistol. It's got a threaded barrel, 15 round mags on this bad boy. Okay. And you got a red dot, it's got a rail system. This is a very large handgun, right? It's a great handgun, but it's got a decent amount of footprint size. It fires a 45 ACP cartridge, which is certainly going to have a little more recoil than your average pistol that's laying around out there. All right. On the far other extreme, we got an old school 1950s Beretta Minx chambered in 22 short. Okay, will this put a hole in somebody? Oh, yeah, it will. This one actually happens to be a model with a little 4-inch barrel, which is actually kind of a little bit rarer model. But I digress. The point is, it's kind of neat. You got a 22 short. Is this something I would buy as my first handgun to protect myself? Probably not. All right, this is a kind of a specialized pistol that fires a 22 short, so definitely not really enough power for what you're wanting. Would I buy this as my first pistol? A full-size FNX Tactical with a threaded barrel, red dot sight, everything like that? Probably not, right? So there's always going to be a Goldilocks answer. So when you're in the gun store and you're shopping for guns and you see some gargantuan huge pistol, just ask yourself, realistically, am I going to carry this every day? Just ask yourself that question. Is this an accessory that I want to strap to my body every single day and go about my daily business? Put it in your hand for a minute. Feel how bulky it is. Feel how heavy it is. I'm not saying this isn't a great gun, because it is. It's one of my favorite suppressor hosts for 45 ACP, but not a practical EDC. A practical EDC should be something that fires a reasonably powerful cartridge and has a small of a footprint as possible. All right, we're going to go to this Bulgarian Makarov pistol. All right, this one fires a 9x18 cartridge. It's basically a 9mm. Let's just kind of keep it very simple here. But it uses what's called a single stack magazine. So the magazine, when you load it, the projectiles stack into a single column, right? And that's not a problem. This is an old school, this is Cold War era technology. But by today's standards, yeah, is this a cool gun? Yeah, it's a great single stack pistol. It's nice and slim. It's got a decent trigger. It only holds like 8 rounds, which is fine. But maybe, all right, if I had to choose between an old school Mac, as much as I love this gun, and like maybe something more modern like the Shield Plus. All right, now you're talking, because this is a gun that is in the same size range. All right, maybe a little bit slimmer actually than the Mac. We're just comparing two guns here, but when we're looking at these two, this is a more modern gun this one has a double stack magazine. So this, I get 13 rounds in my hand with one in the chamber, makes 14 shots in a compact size that is not much bigger than the Mac. Now, what if we want to look at another single stack magazine that's in a more modern gun? All right, well, there's this little Browning Black Label 380. All right, and this one's just based on a 1911 pattern type of gun, which has an external hammer, single action with a safety, okay, manual safety. Some people might prefer that manual safety. Is this gun just as capable as the Mac? Yeah, I'd say so. It's actually a lot slimmer. It's a lot lighter. So, see, with the modern construction, when you get into more modern guns, you're going to have more polymer that's used in the frames and things like that. So this gun has a polymer frame. This gun has a polymer frame. This gun has a steel frame, right? This old Beretta, all steel and alloy, right? So your older guns are typically going to, weigh a little more if they're made with a steel frame. That's always something to consider. Like this Beretta, okay? This is an old school Beretta M9 service pistol, all right? Nothing wrong with this handgun. I mean, this has been a go-to for many police and military units all around the world for decades, right? I mean, this gun has a proven track record. I mean, who hasn't seen Die Hard, right? I mean, come on. You got to have a Beretta taped to your back, okay? But the Beretta is a great pistol, but is it something that I'd probably carry every day? I mean, I think it's a little bit hefty for a gun that you're probably going to carry every day. And then you look at something like the Glock 19. Now, this particular model has a Nibic slide and a few accessories, but ignore the accessories. But the base gun of a Glock 19 gives you very similar capacity to the Beretta, but with a lot lighter of a setup. You got a polymer frame. It keeps the weight down. You've got generous capacity and a gun that's a lot slimmer. It's shorter than the Beretta. It's more concealable than the Beretta. Both guns serve a purpose, but both guns are inheritedly very different in terms of the way they operate, in terms of the amount of rounds they hold, the action that they use, and those are all considerations. All the guns that we've looked at so far have slightly different actions. They all work maybe just a little bit differently from each other. Some work very similar to each other, like the Shield Plus, okay, has a double stack mag and it's striker fired. When it's striker fired, what that means is you have basically an internal channel with a striker in it. The trigger loads that striker up, puts it on tension, and releases it in a precise way when you squeeze the trigger. And that internal striker hits the firing pin and sets the cartridge off. There is no external hammer. There is no external mechanism other than the resetting of the striker in the channel in the slide, in the rear of the slide. All right. These are very, very bomb-proof guns that work really well. The Glock is another example of a gun that uses a striker fire mechanism. There's a lot of striker fire guns on the market right now. They're very, very successful, and for a reason, right? Then you've got hammered guns, right? Like the Black Label we showed you has an external hammer and a grip safety that has to be compressed in order for the hammer to drop. And you have a manual safety to lock the hammer to the rear. So already out the gate, there's a lot more things that you need to know. You've got to know how to manipulate that to cock it, to put the safety on and off, to squeeze the grip frame, to line the sights up. Like every gun has its own manual of arms that you're going to have to learn, right? Just like the Makarov. Okay, now this is probably not a gun you're going to encounter often. This is a more vintage piece. But again, double single action with an external safety, hammer drop safety, just like the Beretta, right? Double single action with a hammer drop safety, okay? Those are all considerations that you have to keep in mind, is the way that the firearm operates, whether or not it has manual safety, whether or not it has a hammer, whether or not it's hammerless, whether or not, like in the situation of this revolver, in a revolver, you have a revolving cylinder that the projectiles or the ammo is placed into, right? You fire this thing 5 times, you got to reload it every 5 shots. And you have to open the cylinder and manually eject the cartridges and either put them in one by one or use a speed loader, right? But this gun has a hammer, it's just hidden inside of the frame. So this is an example of, yeah, I suppose that you could just treat this like double action only, because you're not going to have the ability to cock that hammer. So you have hammerless Smiths. You have a Smith & Wesson revolver that might have a hammer, double single action, or an internal hammer like this one. But you've got revolvers, and of course these work off an entirely different premise of an autoloader. Revolvers generally require a little more skill and time to get behind, to learn how to shoot them really well and how to reload them really fast. There's one thing about semi-autos that I like, is that they're easy to reload, right? To change a magazine out is just simple. You push a button, take the empty magazine out, and then put a fresh magazine in and drop the slide, and you're ready to go again for however many rounds are in that magazine. It's a much easier gun to load, shoot, and reload under stress. A revolver does require a little more niceties and finities and manual of arms and skill to operate, in that type of an environment. And those are all things that we have to think about. We've discussed these concepts in a couple of previous videos where we've talked about, if you really want to go down the revolver rabbit hole, we have a video called Are Revolvers Useless? Check that one out. And I go into a lot more detail on wheel guns versus autos. I wanted this to be a generic video that anybody who's looking to buy a gun, especially a pistol, could use as a reference and a guide to help them decide what they want to get. So we already kind of discussed that you don't want to go real large, you don't want to go real small and puny and something that fires a small cartridge, and that the Goldilocks gun is kind of somewhere in the middle. So I'll give you an idea what I carry. I carry a SIG P365 XL, which is a double stack micro 9mm. So the new thing on the market right now, and I say new, it's been probably over the last 2 or 3, maybe 4 years, the market has really taken a turn towards compact pistols like the Smith & Wesson Shield or the Glock 43 or guns like that, but having more of a double stack frame arrangement that gives you a lot more capacity. So this Shield Plus is akin to the way that my P365 is set up, where it's a small gun that is still about the size of most single stack pistols, okay? But you get the capacity of the full-size pistol. So they make the grip a little bit fatter and then give it a double-stack magazine, and now you got 14 rounds in your hand with one in the chamber. So that gives you almost double the capacity of a single-stack gun. Now, the trade-off is that a single-stack gun is going to be a little bit slimmer. Therefore, if you're trying to really conceal it deeply and hide it, you can hide it a little bit easier. The double-stack gun might be slightly more difficult to hide, but the idea is that the size is only a minuscule amount larger, so most people view it as a worthy trade-off to have the extra rounds in the magazine, to have a magazine that holds 14 shots instead of a magazine that might only hold 7 or 8. That's the general idea, and most people can live with the trade-off because they have done such a great job on these newer micro 9mm double stacks. They really are not that much bigger at all than their single stack brethren. Now, I still have my old school Shield. This is a single stack, and sometimes I carry it. Sometimes I'm just in the mood to carry a single stack Shield. But I have carried the Shield Plus. It's a very comforting thing to know you've got those rounds on tap. And, of course, I'm a huge fan of the SIG P365. I also like the SIG M17 and the SIG M18. This is not necessarily a huge, endorsement for Sig Sauer or anything like that. I'm just saying that I do like those guns quite a bit. I do like the Smith & Wesson M&Ps a considerable amount. Of course, the Shield Plus, if I didn't have the SIG P365 XL, the Shield Plus would certainly be a gun that I would totally feel completely armed and protected with. I like the double stack frame, the short, light configuration, the good sights. Great sights on all of those guns. The SIG P365, most of them come with factory night sights ready to go, and you do have some high visibility sights That is actually a true glow front sight post that's on this Shield Plus. So we do have night sights on this particular gun as well for that kind of money. So I guess that's another thing to consider. If you buy an older gun, a lot of times, they're just going to have regular iron sights. You might want to upgrade to some kind of a night sight, or you might buy an older pistol that has night sights on it, but the night sights don't work anymore. So they use tritium inside of these night sights. They're little vials of tritium, and they glow. They're mildly radioactive. And after 12 years, the sights don't glow anymore because I guess the radiation, whatever causes the glow, it decays, right? And it's no good anymore. So that's something to consider. Most people are going to want to put a set of night sights on their gun, especially if they're going to be carrying, in a low light environment. It's kind of nice to be able to see the sights. You're probably going to want to eventually put some sort of a flashlight on there to be able to properly identify the bogey in the dark that's trying to hurt you. You want to make sure it's not the ice cream man asking you if you want to buy ice cream, right? I mean, you don't want to accidentally shoot someone that you don't want to shoot, right? You got to be able to identify your target and what's beyond it, right? So that's another consideration. When we look at something like the Shield Plus, we don't have a rail system, so our light options for this are going to be kind of limited. Same thing on the P365. Our options might be a little bit limited for nighttime use, for adding some sort of a light or something. Now, there are lights for them. I mean, there's a lot of lights that will actually clamp to the trigger guard on various pistols. So you can get into, a light on a small gun that may not have a lot of accessory space. Like when we look at the Glock, we can see I've got this Viridian C5 light laser combo on this Glock 19, and it mounts to the rail system on the gun, right? So if you're looking to accessorize the pistol and maybe add a light, a laser, maybe you want to add some type of a sight like what I've got on that Glock 19, well, then you may not be able to run the compact micro 9mm double stack like the Shield Plus or maybe the P365. You may not be able to run that gun because you might need the rail system to run your accessories. So there's always going to be like a little Goldilocks zone, a little purgatory where when you're looking for a gun, you can't go with something too tiny and minuscule. You can't go with something, quite that slings bowling balls just yet. But you may not be able to go super small Goldilocks area like this and still be able to have the rail system to be able to accessorize it if you want to run a light, which I'd recommend. If you only have one carry gun, I think that carry gun needs to have a light on it. Now, admittedly, I don't have a light on my 365. I know that I believe it's Wilson Combat does make an aftermarket P365 frame that I think has a rail system on it. I haven't ordered one of those yet. I probably will. But if you're not going to have a light on your pistol, at least carry a flashlight on your person as well. And you may need to learn how to use a flashlight in your non-shooting hand. And that all comes with training. And I guess this would be a great way to sort of close in this video as well, is that in your purchase situation, you want to consider price as well. You want to consider what a gun costs and kind of give yourself a budget for some training too. I suggest everybody who's getting into firearms for the first time, don't just buy a gun and strap it on your hip and go about your business. Get some training. There's a ton of instructors out there that have some great information for you, and they generally don't charge a lot of money for an initial, basic class just to show you the ropes and the basics on guns. I think that's very important to get those basics down. You don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to have an accidental discharge or a negligent discharge. You don't want to, not be able to engage a threat when it's right in front of you. You want to be able to protect yourself at the moment that you need it and make sure you don't hurt an innocent person in the process or yourself. I mean, that's important. You don't want to carry a gun and actually wind up hurting yourself because you're carrying a gun just by virtue of not being well-trained or not knowing what's going on with it. So with cost can be all over the board, okay? I mean, there's custom fancy carry pistols that can cost up to $4,000, and there's really basic stuff that might only set you back $200 or $300. But just know that, the more basic you get, generally the heavier the materials. The guns will be made out of pot metal, and they're real heavy. They may not be super great for longevity. They may not hold up for a long time like an investment-grade pistol would. So you're going to have to deal with weight. You have to deal with, probably not the fanciest machining or anything like that. For instance, All right, Smith & Wesson sells a gun they call the Sigma. It's like in their SVE93 or whatever they call that thing. It's their entry level M&P line is their Sigma, and they machine the slide on that particular gun. And I think those guns are like $300. Like they're a nice entry level price, right? Whereby the M&P that they sell is a more fancy model. They're like $599 or something. So it's about double the price for the M&P over the Sigma. But they machine the slide on the Sigma out of the exact same stock that they use to make the M&P slides. The only difference is the M&P slides are finished nicer. They have more engraving. They have fancier cocking serrations. A lot of them have the slide rider cut into the sight, so you can mount an optic, kind of like what we have on this F&X right here. So you're paying extra for those extra features, the nicer finish, the nicer machining, the nicer serrations. They are great looking pistols. I mean, the Sigma, a little more basic slide serrations, basic cuts, a basic clear finish. Like, they just bead blast them and that's it. Like, they don't have any kind of fancy finish, but it's a cheaper gun for a reason. It's still a great gun. The Sigma is still a great gun. Now, they do have, not as good of triggers as well. The triggers aren't as good as the M&P, so you're always going to see some difference in price and think, well, why is this Smith & Wesson $300 and why is this one $600? Always look at the features. Always, don't just plop the money on the table and buy a gun because the salesman sold it to you or sold you on it. Look at the features, right? You wouldn't go pay a whole bunch of money for, I don't know, any other thing. Like you wouldn't buy some car for $100,000 and not want the salesman to tell you all the bells and whistles that make that car $100,000, would you? It's the same as any other purchase, right? Look at the quality. Look at what you're buying. Pay attention to what you're buying. If the $300 gun and the $600 gun, you're looking at the two and you go, wow, like the $600 gun's got all these bells and whistles, and wow, that's cool. I like that idea of having that. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe you just need the basic version. Especially if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend a ton of money, you don't have to spend a ton of money to get into an entry-level pistol that will serve your needs, especially if saving that $300 gives you enough money to go have some ammo to practice and maybe take you a little course. I mean, most basic pistol courses shouldn't cost you more than about $60 or $80 for one session. They'll usually do a 2-hour session with you, and they probably shouldn't charge you more than about $40 or $50 an hour. Right? It's no different than hiring a mechanic or hiring a masseuse or anything else, right? A gun trainer is just a person that's going to come in and give you some instruction. So take that time, spend the money to go take a class. And I think that, that would really help you in your journey to being able to protect yourself with a firearm. All right, so we went over features real basically. We went over size considerations, and we went over some technology considerations. We went over pricing, of course. Let's talk a little bit about calibers real quick. And I know this video is getting a bit long, but I promise this is going to point you in the right direction. All right, we discussed it 22 short out of the little Beretta might be a little bit too light. We discussed it a 45 ACP out of F&X might be a little bit on the heavy side, right? I always tell people that your first gun, you should probably just go ahead and get a 9mm and be done with it. There's so many people that get to reading these articles, they get to, reading things they see online about calibers, and they go, well, I think I want a 380 because it don't kick as much as a 9mm. I mean, come on. It ain't that much of a recoil difference. And you're going to be much better served by 9mm than 380 because 9mm is everywhere. It's super common. There are infinite amounts of carry ammo available for 9mm. Now, look. There's a lot available for 380. I'm not saying that you cannot get great carry ammo for 380 or that there's not plenty of ball ammo laying around for 380. But if you're usually 380 is a little bit more expensive than 9mm. So 9mm is cheaper to shoot. We're talking 50 to 50 comparison. Like if I buy a 50-round box of 380 or if I buy a 50-round box of 9mm, the 50-round box of 9mm is always going to cost less than the 380. I don't care what anybody says. 9mm is cheaper than 380 because they don't load as much 380. They load a buttload of 9mm so they can sell 9mm cheaper. And 9mm is so common, and almost all of your major guns that are out there now, 9mm is what they kind of base their lines around. Like that's the Goldilocks area of the cartridges that are available. Okay? Yeah, can you get a shield like this in 45 ACP? You can. Can you get it in 40? Yeah, you can get them in 40. But why? Get the 9, and you'll be able to shoot it better. You'll learn how to shoot better with it a lot sooner than you will trying to sling some heavy projectile or shoot a hotter cartridge that is going to probably frustrate you out the gate if you're a first-time gun owner. So my recommendation on cartridges is don't worry about cartridges. Buy a 9mm. Don't look at anything else. I want you to buy a 9mm. All right? If you are, let's just say, lucky enough to have maybe some extra money and you want to get a good companion, okay, to go with your 9mm, a lot of these companies also make 22s that are set up in a very similar configuration to the full-size carry guns that they sell. That's something to consider, right? I've got my M&P 22 pistol that I have set up with a suppressor, and I can go out and shoot 22 and still get some training in with my pistol and not have to burn up 9mm. So if you're willing to buy another gun, now the nice thing about 22s is that they're generally not very expensive. So compared to their centerfire counterpart, usually the 22s are going to cost less than their like 9mm counterpart. So if you can afford it, that's a great way to save money on ammunition, and you'll probably shoot a lot more too if you can shoot cheaper. That's just something to consider. And in a pinch, you can still protect yourself with a 22 as well. Now, there's a lot of points of contention related to 22s in terms of their use in defensive shootings, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but just know that if you can afford a second gun out the gate, and if you're serious about learning how to shoot a pistol really well, getting a 22 set up very similar to the gun that you're buying might not be a bad idea to get some more training in. Just a consideration. But I'm telling you out the gate, buy a 9mm. Right. Now, there's a lot of different ammo out there, and I don't want to, spend a ton of time discussing this in this video, but I just feel like it is relevant. I just want to quickly mention, because a lot of folks, you're new to guns. I get it. You do have some basic different ammo that's out there, right? You've got ball ammo, which is just like a, copper encapsulated lead projectile, solid lead core with a metal jacket, what they call like a full metal jacket or ball round, right? It doesn't expand. It just goes straight through, or it hits a piece of steel and disintegrates, hits a brick wall, breaks apart, disintegrates. They generally just shoot straight through flesh, like they're just straight line penetration, and they don't cavitate or open up or anything like that. You have hollow point ammunition, which is more of like your defensive ammunition. Now, while you can't generally just categorize hollow points and soft points, and they all kind of have a different way that they provide a shock factor and the level of penetration that the projectile provides. But the basic idea is that your carry ammo or your personal defense ammo is going to have special projectiles that are designed to open up and create larger wounds and to basically stop the threat with a lot more ability, okay, than a ball round would do. So just know that you do have different types of ammunition. That there is ammo that is meant for defense and meant to protect you, and then there's ball ammo that's generally meant to practice with. So when you go to buy your first gun, especially if you're going into a big gun shop or something, they're obviously gonna try to sell you ammo. And of course, like a toy with no batteries is no good, right? So same thing with your ammo choice. Whatever gun you're gonna purchase, you need to consider the ammo choices that you make. And there are other videos that we've made that will help you in that journey that you can check out later if you want to. We've got a ton of educational material that we've put out here on the channel that will help hopefully a bunch of you that are in the in this journey. So we won't spend a lot of time talking about ammo, but just know they're going to ask you if you want to buy some ammo, and you need to know that hey, I want some stuff for the range to go practice with, but also want some stuff to carry. And you want the weight of those projectiles to be very similar. So if you're going to train with 124 grain ball ammunition because you've found a great deal on it or something like that, and you're going to wind up setting up a red dot on the gun and regulating that red dot to shoot with 124 grain ammo, well, then it's probably a good idea to find a carry load that's 124 grains and is as reasonably close in velocity to the speed that ball round is moving, so they shoot pretty close to each other. Every round is going to shoot a little different. Sometimes you'll have some that'll shoot just a little bit slightly different point of aim because of the powder or the weight of the projectile or things like that. So a lot of those things can come into play. So just kind of bear in mind, whatever carry round you choose, you probably want to try to keep the weight similar, just so they're shooting close to the same area. You have some large extremes. It can make the round shoot maybe a little off. I mean, not a ton, but in the ranges that you're typically going to be engaging in potential threat with a handgun, it probably would never matter. I'm just being critical. I'm just being thorough. And that's one thing I guess you have to remember is sometimes you just got to be thorough and methodical with what you're looking at when you go into a gun shop and you're shopping for a gun. Don't just take the salesman's word for it on the first thing you see. You wouldn't go to a car lot and just buy the first car that you drive, would you? You wouldn't buy the first car that the salesman shows you just because he's trying to, he makes the most money and profit off of that car, and he's just trying to maximize his commission. So just keep that in mind. The gun world's the same way. They're going to try to sell you on the hotness, knowing that, maybe their profit margin's great on that gun. Maybe it's a used gun that they've got a great profit margin in because they bought it for next to nothing, and they want to sell you that used gun just so they can make a pile of money. Look, we have entire videos that we've made on buying a used pistol, okay? There are lots of great options out there. I'm not going to discuss it in this video. Now, look, used is a great way to go. You don't have to buy a new gun. You can buy a used gun, but there are a lot of things to consider that we are not going to get to. That's a little bit more advanced than what we're going to go through in this video. I wanted to answer that initial question of what should I look for in a gun? What are the things that I should consider? How do I pick my first carry gun? And I think that we really scratched the surface in a way that hopefully got enough of you engaged that if you want to learn more, I'm going to put some links down below to a bunch of other videos we've made. Ball ammo versus hollow point ammo. Like we've talked about that, right? Tons of different things like what we discussed in this video. We've made videos on all sorts of stuff. This is just serves as sort of a synopsis as an intro to someone that is looking on Google or YouTube and they're searching in, what do I look for in a used gun? I'm trying to get this to show up for you so that this can point you in the right direction. But I'm telling you, trust me on my experience on this one. This is one thing I want you to trust me on. Buy a 9mm right out the gate. You'll be happy you did. 9mm is very common. It's reasonably powerful. It still accomplishes the job. It gets the work done. It still possesses a necessary lethality to end the threat. But it's a gun that you're going to be able to shoot well with very little time. It doesn't kick that hard, right? So it's very general recoil. You got very generous capacity because generally 9mm holds more rounds in a magazine than some of the other calibers that are out there. So you're going to get more follow-up shots. That's always important. There's a lot of reasons that I recommend 9mm as a starting point. Hopefully I articulated those points correctly here in this video and let you know kind of the Goldilocks zone to think about. Start looking at 9mm, start looking at the micro 9s and compare those to things like a Glock 19 or something in that price point or that size range, and I think that's where you're going to kind of find where you probably want to be. Also, holsters. I'll just kind of quickly mention, make sure the gun you're buying has a holster available for it. That's probably important. And believe it or not, there probably are some guns out there that you would have to have a custom holster made. Now, I don't want to scare you into thinking that that's the norm, though. I mean, most of the modern stuff that's out there, the holster companies support everything pretty well. Like when a new gun gets released, they usually will get a blue gun in advance so they can start making holsters so that when that gun comes out, then the holster makers will have holsters available for the new hotness. So most pistols are pretty well supported by the holster industry. If it's a modern pistol from a reputable manufacturer, especially something that's been made within the last 20, 30 years, chances are some major company is going to make a holster for it. So don't be too concerned about that. But that's something to consider. You are going to need a way to carry your gun. You're going to need a way to carry your extra ammo if you want to carry extra magazines. That gets more into the class territory. When you take the class, the instructor should go over with you potential holster options, how to carry a gun, and all what those options entail. So that will point you in the right direction. But again, I recommend taking a class. And lastly, don't be afraid to take a class. I know it can be daunting at first. Maybe you're worried about being a noob. Don't worry about being a noob. Look, these folks in these classes, think about it. If you ever went and took a motorcycle course, where you got trained on how to ride a motorcycle, did the instructor give you a whole bunch of crap for not having ever rode a motorcycle before? No, they train you. That's what they're there to do. They're there to show you your way through it, right? So gun trainers are the same way. They're not gonna belittle you or make you feel weird. They know that you don't have any experience, but that's the important thing. Go in there with an open mind and just go in there and receive the training and be open-minded about it and listen to the instructor and do what they tell you, and you're probably going to be just fine. So don't let it be a daunting task for you. Don't let it make you feel a little uneasy about it. I mean, everyone's new at some point, so it's okay to be new. All right. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. This should answer the question, hopefully a little more than just answering the question. This was quite a long video, and I appreciate those of you that stuck around, but I wanted to make this video to assist the community and to assist folks that are getting into their first pistol purchase, and hopefully this pointed you in the right direction. Again, reference more of the videos below if you want to learn more. There's a ton of information to know, but once you get the basics down, it's not really that hard. It's a fairly straightforward and simple process to own, carry, use, and maintain your firearm in a safe manner. Totally not an issue. So thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell so you get all of our videos. Thank you so much for tuning in. Many more videos on the way. We'll see you soon.